we're talking the Jetsons are here,
Exactly.
if you will.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to pick you up at your house
Yeah.
using a drone. The door's going to open. You're going to get in, and it's going to fly you somewhere.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for takeoff. You are now flying high with Travis Lamance.
What's happening, Flying High friends? Welcome to another episode of the Flight Deck. We're excited to have a special guest with us today. We have Terry Smith, the program coordinator for Amarillo Colleges AMP School. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
It's great to be here.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Well, our show frequently veers off into the subject of A&P technicians and manpower and labor and all that stuff, so I'd like to dive into that with you. But before I do that, you want to just give the audience a little recap of who you are and where you've been in life and how you found yourself being the program coordinator.
Sure. It was just unusual circumstances, but my name is Terry Smith again. Been in the aviation field for about 40 years. I've worked for Lockheed Martin, Bell Helicopter, America West Airlines, had my own business at one time. I am currently at Amarillo College, as Mr. Lamance has indicated, and I've been there for 11 years.
Nice.
Since I've been at Amarillo College, I've gone into the DME work, was as designated mechanic examiner work for the school, and we're growing quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good thing for us.
That's a little bit about me and my background.
What exactly is a designated mechanic examiner? Is that a capacity with the school, or is that your own thing that you do as a sidebar to the program coordinator?
That's a sidebar to the program coordinator. So when the students come to school, they are actually students. Mm-hmm. And then when they finish their training and ready for certification, they become applicants.
Right.
I guess it's been about 8 years ago, the FAA stepped in and said, hey, we'd like for you to be an examiner for us. And it's not something that you can apply for. It's usually something they tap you on the shoulder for.
You get voluntold for?
You get voluntold for. You know, there's a lot of that in aviation.
There is a lot of voluntold situations.
So, yeah, I got voluntold to do that, and I've been more than happy to do it. You know, when I first started out in this business, I thought that, you know, I'll do this for a while and find a good job and retire. Well, that didn't work out that way for me. I just keep finding jobs to do. But anyhow, back to the DME, that is something that the FAA does that they would designate you to test individuals once they've completed their training.
Right.
Whether it's military training, official, technical school training, Part 147 school training. Mm-hmm. A little FAR stuff there mm-hmm. for you. But 147 school training primarily is what I do.
Nice. When they go to the college, they get all the training and hours that are required by the FAA to mm-hmm. take their test. But once they're actually doing their oral and practical exam and all that, that's done as an applicant outside of the school system, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
If you've been doing that for 11 years, there's something you enjoy about it. What do you like about being a educator out there?
Paying it forward.
Yeah.
I think most of all, you know, I always wanted to go back and teach young people mm-hmm. some of the things that I've learned along the way, the 40 plus years I've been in the industry. Right. And, you know, the things I've done. If they could just pick up one or two things, you know, from somebody and most of all pick up the understanding of having some integrity. Yeah. And some critical thinking skills. If they could learn those two things, I think they would be better suited in this industry.
We touch on the integrity a lot in our discussions on the show, and everybody that we run into that we talk to about aviation, that almost always comes up as like first and foremost requirement for the job is having a really high level of integrity. Normally it's discussed around if you don't have solid integrity, it's really easy to cheat the system and put somebody in a safety issue or cause financial and physical harm to people if you don't have it. Is that kind of your same take on why you prioritize integrity?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, the safety aspect of it. The safety aspect of it, I mean, you know, I like to, you know, I mean, it's kind of a joke with us, but it's not really. But we like to say, you know, a surgeon can only kill one person at a time if they do something wrong. We can kill all 200 souls on board and whoever's on the ground. So, you know, Not that we get paid as much as a surgeon, but
Yeah.
we tell them the seriousness of the business. If you don't understand the seriousness of it, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah. Well, and I know firsthand that you're an exceptionally good mechanic, so you could go out into private industry and make far more money working in the industry than you do as a educator. But you've been doing that for a long time, so it's admirable that you're there doing that, because it's something our industry really needs. We need people that actually know what's going on out in the field and in the real world to be training and educating the guys that are coming into it, where I've seen some situations where you have educators that are there because they're not good enough to be out in the real world, and I know firsthand that's not your situation. So it's a awesome thing that you're doing, and something our industry really needs more of. And I think if you look at the retiree rate of our experienced guys and the guys coming into the business, where do you see the choke points and the bottlenecks on being able to meet the demand that we have coming up?
I think it starts at the high school level.
Okay.
I think we've got to get the high school students to understand that, working with your hands is not a bad thing.
Right.
And doing some of these skilled labor jobs pay as much as some of the jobs that they think they might get when they get out of high school or more. Right now, I mean, when I came out of AMP school, I think I was working for $5 an hour, for several years.
Right.
And it took me a while, 10 years or so, 7 or 8 years maybe, to get up to $17 an hour with an IA, which is an inspection authorization.
Right.
And doing that, and now coming out of school, there are some companies offering sign-on bonuses and paying $31 to $45 an hour and not having any experience. So it just I'm kind of jealous in a way,
right.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad for them.
Yeah.
They're stepping in. It's the mecca of aviation right now.
For sure.
We'll see how it happens.
And we hear and see a lot of attention put on pilot shortages and talking about the lack of pilots meeting demand and all that. But my opinion, the first rung of that ladder that gets ignored a lot is the maintenance demand.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have all the pilots you want. If you don't have the technicians to safely and effectively keep the aircraft flying, they don't do you any good. So you have to have a good supply of qualified technicians there to do that job. And I would argue that the mountain we're facing over the next decade is far worse in the maintenance world than it is in the pilot world. So it's, I mean, the numbers that I see and hear a lot are talking about north of 50 to 60% of our workforce licensed AMPs are retiring in the next decade from the baby boomer generation, and they're not getting replaced nearly fast enough. So is that kind of the trend you're seeing as well?
Absolutely. Well, currently school, our certification only allows us to house 50 students in one year, 50 students a year. So that's a graduating cohort and a new cohort coming in. So that's 25 coming in and 25 graduating.
Right.
The numbers that I'm seeing are somewhere around 400,000 job shortages, personnel out there.
Wow.
So there's 400,000 openings out there for AMP mechanics.
Right now.
And Boeing did a study that's expected to double by 2030. So, trying to fill 800,000 jobs with 50 students is
25 at a time.
going to be putting a dent in it.
Right.
So we've either got to expand our facilities, duplicate what we have on days, and start a night course. We have a single entry point.
Yeah.
So 21 months out, we put out 25 students or 25 mechanics, and that's just not going to keep up with the pace of what's going on.
From what you're seeing or what you know about it, do we have a lack of people desiring to go into that field, or do we have a lack of capacity to train enough people, or is it both?
I think probably both. Our situation, our personal situation, is the lack of training facilities, and I don't mean any disrespect to Amarillo College, because they've been great to me and to our program. It's just that finding, first of all, if to replicate what we have on days, we've got to go out and find a couple of instructors. Well, with what the industry's paying right now, you can't find good instructors. I was very fortunate to be able to go over to Amarillo College because I've got 2 retirements.
Right.
You know, one from Lockheed and one from Bell Helicopter.
So you're financially in a situation you can do it where a lot of qualified instructors probably aren't.
I could do that, and it's, from my standpoint, God led me to where I'm at right now. So my plan was different than what God's plan was, so that's how I ended up at Amarillo College.
His plan always wins, right?
Absolutely. I had a lady in our church one day says, "Hey, the Lord had a vision. The Lord showed me that you were going to lead a lot of young people," and I was like, "Oh Lord," you know. And what does that mean? But anyhow, I feel really good that where I'm at. That, you know, there's a couple other things there that it gives me an opportunity to witness young people, but it also gives me an opportunity to pass along what I've learned in the industry. But back to the numbers, it's just there's just no way, you know, our industry can keep up with it at this pace. It's going to get exponentially worse, I believe.
Well, the aviation industry itself is growing 5 to 8%, depending on what numbers you look at year over year, and our licensed technicians are shrinking year over year. So it's just not a good combination right now. So we got to figure out some solutions on how to rectify it. And one of the things that bothers me about it is that a lot of the guys from the baby boomer generation that are retiring out, that's an exodus of knowledge as much as it is manpower, you know. So the guys coming in, they're not going to have as many of those senior guys around to learn from. And when they come, you know, I've lost count of how many, but I've got a significant number of my technicians that work for me came from your school, and they come in better prepared than I've seen them in a long time, and they get better and better every year. But even coming in really well prepared, they don't know what they don't know. You've got to have those more senior guys around there to teach them. And we always use the expression, we attach them to the older guy's pocket. You know, we'll pull out their pocket and we like, you don't let go of that for a while. And
there you go.
And you just, you know, they just follow that older guy around, and they just learn so much from them. And losing that piece out and just having all these new guys coming in, we got some challenges to make sure we don't have safety slips, and I don't want to see the aviation industry's safety record backtrack. And all of that starts at the maintenance level. You know, obviously you've got to have well-trained pilots that know their aircraft and know their procedures, but you have to have really good quality maintenance to start with.
Well, what I've seen over here is that quality starts with the top.
Yeah.
And then it works its way down to the bottom.
For
but
sure.
it's bottom up, top down also.
Yeah.
The personnel that we've been able to send over here to you have just been outstanding. They've been outstanding, you know, in their class and environment, been leaders in their class. But those are few and far between, because a lot of those kids were raised on farms or ranches, and they've had some background, some mechanical aptitude. What we really need to see is more of that vocational education pushed back into the high schools again, and I think they're doing that again, where they're teaching them how to, you know, actually work with their hands and stuff. You know, I was fortunate enough that my dad was a mechanic, and he was also a helicopter pilot, so I learned a lot from him just working with him, you know, on the farm and ranch. I was raised on a farm and ranch.
I do think that is a geographical benefit that we have here that a lot of people don't have in the real urban areas, where they don't get the opportunity to work on a farm and work with tools. And like when you're out on the ranch or the farm and a tractor breaks, you got to figure out how to get it going. And so it's a little easier to learn some mechanical knowledge on a tractor, an old pickup or something, before you're working on somebody's airplane, you know. And so it's you definitely I've noticed when you get a fresh A&P that never worked on anything, went and got their license and starts to work, versus a farm kid, a ranch kid that grew up working on stuff and then got their license and then came. Like the kid that grew up doing mechanical things starts off at a whole different level than the other guy. Have you kind of noticed that in your classroom as well?
Absolutely. You don't have to spend as much time with them, but one of the things that draws my attention to those types of students is that the student their aptitude is, you have to let them know that there are some things that we need to get rid of here, like baling wire is not acceptable. You know,
baling wire and duct tape fixes everything, man.
Baling wire, we got to get this tractor going.
Yeah.
We kind of like to use the Alaskan pilot scenario where you got to get this aircraft off the riverbed for sure, because your boss is going to be breathing down your neck, but don't be afraid to step up and say no, because safety comes first and foremost. But, you know, don't cut corners.
Yeah.
We've been able to do that out on the farm and ranch to get things going for a little while until we can get apart or whatever, but that doesn't happen.
Elevate the quality control quite a bit with them, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. You know, having worked at Bell, I was the quality operations manager at Bell, and for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, and you know, it was paramount that, you know, our mission is to put out the best flying aircraft the world, the warfighter could use, you know. That's kind of what our mission is at Amarillo College, is to put out the best mechanic. I want industry calling me saying, when's your next graduating class?
For sure.
You know, and to be able to support that way, that's our mission.
One thing I've noticed about the way you do things that I think is really beneficial to the students and equally beneficial to the employers is you've done a really good job of figuring out where that student will fit the best to put them on the best track for success. So you've done a really good job with me of identifying, hey, for his type of model and the things they do, these guys would be really good candidates, and we haven't had one that you've made that claim with yet that wasn't good. And I think you're doing the same thing on, hey, you'd be better going to an assembly line, you'd be better going to an airline, and so I think that's you do it from a genuine place where you want them to be successful, so you're not pushing them into a place that you know they don't fit, where they're going to fail and wash out. So I think getting them in the door in the right environment is really important to their career path, and it builds your reputation with the industry, because we know that if you call and tell us this guy would be good for your program, it's accurate, and we're not going to be hiring and having to learn the hard way that they don't fit our program. So I think with the way you're doing that, and I don't know how you institutionalize that in the school more so than it's just a talent of yours, but if we can figure out how to make that more of a actual process in the school somehow, whether it's through aptitude testing or personality testing, or I don't know what it is, I don't pretend to have the answer, but if we could get that philosophy pushed out into other programs and other A&P schools, I think it would help a lot with the success rate, because you can tell me the statistics on how many start school versus how many actually end up with their A&P license, but even after they have their A&P license, we have way too many that only work for a year or two in the industry and then go somewhere else. And the part of that is because the A&P has to know hydraulics, electronics, engines. Like, you become such a well-rounded
28 different skill sets.
That's crazy.
Yes.
So we're constantly getting other industries doing their best to poach our licensed guys because they know they're well-rounded. And I heard this a while back. I don't know if you know this is true, but I've heard the largest employer of A&Ps in the world is Disneyland.
It is.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
So
yes.
they work on all the electronics and hydraulics and everything on all their rides and all that stuff. And just blows my mind that they're the highest employer of licensed mechanics.
I would have never thought about going to work for Disney, you know, with my A&P license. But, you know, back in our days, when I was coming up through the A&P school, when I was going to A&P school and getting ready to graduate, our job opening availability was it came out in a trader plane once a month. So you'd read trader plane, and there'd be a job in there, and you'd, you know, call, and if they left a number, you'd call, or you'd have to send them, you know, snail mail back then. And by the time you got a response back, that job was already filled. Right. You know, the technology now just makes things happen so much faster that you don't realize what technology's doing to our industry is very good in ways, but then also it's you know, it's kind of a stranglehold on us too.
Right. Well, and we have a full-time AI expert on staff now that is building automation and doing all the things in the background to take away anything that you don't need physically hands-on an airplane to maximize our labor pool for them to do the things that you physically need to be doing on the airplane, because we spend a ton of time on research and paperwork and logbook entries and looking up FARs and filling out 337s. Like, if you really add up how much time you're spending on that, it was somewhere around 30 to 40% of their labor time is going into doing all that type of work. So we're hoping that with what he's building for us as a proprietary system to us, that it'll help pull that number way down, where we can keep them maximizing their labor on the things that they're really good at, because AI and computers are better at a lot of these other things than the humans are.
Yeah.
But you can't replace a human's judgment and expertise when it's physically on the aircraft of, is this good, is this not good, kind of situations. So it's going to be interesting to see how many other companies go that route and try to leverage the need for labor by augmenting it like that.
Yeah, AI, I think it would be really good for our industry, and with the aspect of records and that kind of thing. Because I know when I was doing the annual inspections, I was out there in the field doing annual inspection. I'd spend 40 hours, outside of working on the aircraft, just trying to figure out where I was at, where the aircraft was at, paperwork wise.
Right.
With all the research that you had to do. So it's quite prohibitive as far as being productive and return on investment.
Right.
I can see that in the industry, and I think that's where I'll go back to being able to select where students, what path they need to take, is just from experience, just from having worked in manufacturing side of it, the military side of it, and now the technical or the school side of it, and then general aviation side of that as well. But just being able to work in all those different industries in the commercial world as well, but just knowing what aptitude they need, what they have to be able to get into each one of those industries,
Right.
and where they would best fit. But we do a lot of hands-on stuff now. Everybody's using virtual training.
Right.
We still go old school over there because one, I don't even like social media. But anyhow, we still do a lot of the old school training. We have the students take an engine apart, put it back together, and hey, go start and run it.
Right.
Let's see what you did, see where you're at. We, hands-on everything.
Yeah.
Now you can do some virtual stuff. I know that the airlines is using some virtual stuff right now, and AI stuff where they can, orient you to an aircraft for a specific task, in their training programs. But unless you got a tool in your hand, you're not going to know what that's like until you actually physically get out there. But I guess it could get you headed in the right direction.
Get you in the right direction. But
it's going to be a while before. My point is, it's going to be a while before AI can actually maintain the aircraft. I don't know if that's ever possible, but
maybe some point in the future, but not any time.
They could probably build a large majority of the aircraft, robotically,
right.
But maintaining it, I think, is going to still require that human touch.
There's nothing that can quite replace trying to bend your arm in 3 places that it don't bend to get to that part the engineer decided needed to be right here. And
I think every engineer ought to be a mechanic first.
Right.
I always said, give me another elbow here.
Yeah, we need another elbow in the middle of our forearm.
Yeah.
But I think the expression, or the way that I always look at it, is if a mechanic built an airplane, it would be the easiest airplane to work on ever, but it would weigh so much it would never fly.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be one big access panel.
But how do you put a battery where you got to take something out?
Right.
Or, it looked good on a blueprint.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was one of the things, and I think we're seeing it in their products now. Whenever I worked for Cessna, it was Cessna back then, Textron now. Whenever I worked for them, that was 25 years ago. And they're already, or at that time, they were already putting engineers and maintenance guys on a team together during design and construction. And so an engineer would come out with a design. Well, before they would put it into full production, they would make the maintenance guys go look at it and like, is this serviceable in the field? Can we actually do this? How practical is this? And then they would collaborate and try to figure out, okay, that doesn't work. Let's move it here. Let's do this. Let's do that. And from the maintenance perspective, the evolution of their citation line in particular, from the 550s and 560s up to what they're doing on the CJs now. I mean, the CJs are, in my opinion, drastically easier to work on.
Phenomenal.
Things are more accessible, and I think that's product of what they were doing on that. And I wasn't firsthand involved with like Bombardier and Falcon and those guys doing it, but I think they do similar things because we've seen a similar evolution of maintenance friendliness, both in the design of the aircraft and in their maintenance manuals and their product support after the fact. It's all gotten a lot better over the last 20, 30 years. So
I think they start out well intended, through their R&D.
Right.
And I've seen teams like that working together. But then you get out there and you start getting these STCs, the add-on stuff, and everybody wants, the latest and greatest avionics suite, and they want the, all the bells and whistles with the winglets and stuff that's cool, I guess. But I think it's cool too, and it keeps me employed and keeps you employed, But there's a point that stuff, just keeping it simple is, the best way to go.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we'll get back to the video in a sec. But first, quick question for you business owners and high achievers watching. When you're traveling around the country for deals, scaling teams, or managing stress, are you actually flying with a team that makes your life easier? Or are you dealing with scheduling headaches, surprise maintenance bills, and too many moving parts behind the scenes? Well, that's why today's sponsor, Haven Aviation Services Group, exists. Think of them as the safe haven of the sky. Haven is a vertically integrated aviation company, meaning they handle everything under one roof, from your private jet charters, aircraft management, brokerage, maintenance, avionics, and premium grade services at their FBO. For aircraft owners especially, this is the absolute real best value. Instead of juggling pilots, insurance, scheduling, maintenance, hangars, legal docs, Haven manages it all in one place. No guessing, no surprises, and no wondering why something suddenly costs six figures. Their entire focus is transparency, safety, and long-term planning. So you actually trust the people managing your aircraft and don't have to stress about it at all. So if you want an aviation partner that operates with the same discipline and results-driven mindset we talk about on the show, hit the link in the description to connect with Haven Aviation Services Group. Big thanks to Haven ASG for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to the show.
Well, I think that's an important point too whenever people are selecting people to do aftermarket work on their aircraft and being careful on who they select. And it's the cheapest one's not always the best one, and usually not the best one, because if they're redoing your whole avionics suite in there and you have the bottom dollar operator that's just trying to crank it out, are they crimping your pins correctly? Are they labeling correctly? Are they routing them correctly? And all these things that when you go pick up your aircraft, it may work the day you pick it up, but then shortly after you start having these weird little problems, and then other people are going there trying to fix it, and they didn't have schematics for it. They didn't, they over crimped all the pins. So now you got all these wires breaking loose at random times. And I think when you get something new from the manufacturer, there's kind of a set standard that you get there. But then when you go into the aftermarket world, it can get a little bit Wild West,
Yeah, even though the FAA says that you have to have those instructions for continued airworthiness.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if those always make it into the maintenance records. But, that'd be great if everybody was on the same page. And that's what I'm trying to, pass along to these students over there, is that when you do something like that, you could start off with the best aircraft in the world citation, or King Air or whatever, Learjets. And then you started adding all these things on. Well, you've got to know how to maintain that down the road. You've got to be able to maintain it and be able to understand it, that what it is it's going to take to keep that airworthy, know. And the aircraft doesn't know whether it's airworthy or not, but we as mechanics have to know what that's required to be.
And so what you're referring to is any time that the original manufacturer's type certificate is changed by adding equipment, you get a STC, which is a supplemental type certificate. And so obviously if the manufacturer didn't originally build it with that part on it, and you go and add that part on it, now you have a new thing that can break, can wear out, can have default or defects or whatever on it. So that supplemental type certificate, it gives you your initial installation, how you do it, how you wire it, all that gets reviewed and approved by the FAA. And then what you're referring to with the with the ICAs as instructions for continued airworthiness. So now if you go look at the maintenance manual from the way the manufacturer made it, it's not going to have this thing over here because it wasn't part of it. So those ICAs are the instructions that supplement to the maintenance manual on how to continue maintaining that. And I don't remember what year they started mandating that, is early 2000s maybe.
Something like
they
that.
started mandating that ICAs come out with it. But to your point, a lot of the checklists and stuff that come from the manufacturer, they don't have that on there. And if you don't have experienced technicians or an experienced shop that knows what they're doing, that supplemental part's not ever getting looked at. So you don't know what
can
kind of
overlook
condition
it really
it's in.
quickly.
When you were over at Bell, were you building the Ospreys over there? Is that what you were part of?
I was a part of the Osprey program, the H1 program, and the OH-58D program, and the 525 program.
Really?
Yeah.
What, the V-22, the Osprey is making a pretty big impact in the military nowadays. That thing's a wild machine,
Yeah.
What did you like about that aircraft, or what did you dislike about that aircraft?
The technology is just phenomenal. I thought it was far too complex for the young military mechanic.
Right.
I thought you would have to have seasoned mechanics. You couldn't just take someone fresh out of high school, put them through boot camp, and then teach them how to work on aircraft and maintain that one, because it had some complexities about it.
Yeah.
The complexities I didn't like, but some aspects it was, you have to have it because of the weight. And the fly-by-wire stuff, it was really great. I mean, that's something that, having come from early days in the 80s and stuff where we're still using cables and stuff, and fly-by-wire was just starting to come out. Most of the aircraft I work on was all, push-pull rods and cables and stuff like that. But when you start, sending signals to an actuator to make control changes or to lower the landing gear or whatever it is, that was a whole new ball game for me, and I thought that was really great. Even though it was based off of 1958 technology, if it weren't for computers, that Osprey wouldn't be flying. And there's 4 computers on that thing. So.
In the Osprey, is the engine back in the back part of the pylon and then using some kind of a gear system out to that prop that turns up and down, or is the whole engine out there turning up and down?
Okay, the engine's in the lower half of the nacelle.
Right. And
then the prop rotor gearbox is right above that, and there's a combining prop rotor gearbox to the engine, and then you've got a main rotor or a mid-wing gearbox. Those 2 engines are synced together. The props are synced together, and the engines are synced together. You can, if you get an engine out, you can go single engine.
Really?
It's designed to do that. Drive one engine, you can drive both props through a drive shaft that runs all the way down the aft wing cove.
Nice. Do you know on the new 280 that they're building now, it seems like they put some effort into simplifying that system out there?
They really did.
Is it?
I don't know a whole lot about that because the first test aircraft was being built when I was getting ready to retire from Bell. But that aircraft, they've worked on a lot of things and simplified a lot of things, especially in the tilt axis part of that. The engine, and that kind of thing is all a lot different than what they've.
So I was out at the Verticon helicopter conference here a few weeks ago, and I hadn't been in a couple of years, and seeing all the VTOL and eVTOL stuff, the electric vertical takeoff and landing machines that are all electric and battery powered. When I was out there the last time a few years ago, it was all very hypothetical and could be and would be cool and all this. But when I was out there this year, it feels a whole lot more tangible right now than it had before. You guys get into much conversation or anything about where that's going to go? Or
we do. We talk a lot about the VTOL and all the home build stuff and all the light sport aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
And then we talk about drones.
Yeah.
And the need, we're talking, the Jetsons are here.
Exactly.
If you will.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to pick you up at your house.
Yeah.
Using a drone. The door's going to open. You're going to get in. It's going to fly you somewhere.
Right.
I believe eventually.
I don't think we're
but
far
so
off.
we're really going to need to focus on the years to come. So we always try to look at about 5 to 10 years out of where we're going to be in aviation, what technologies are we going to be needing to keep up with. And even though this is new per se, today's technology is going to be old tomorrow.
Right.
It's just like the cell phone.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to expedite some form of avionics electronics program into our facility.
Yeah.
How we get there, I've been thinking about it for a while, how to get some avionics and electronics technician labs set up so that we can either, it's dependent, the avionics side is dependent on the avionics suite you're using, whether it's Garmin, Honeywell, or, otherwise. But, to get someone to set something like that up, it would be specific to a brand name versus, you can still teach the basics that apply to all the brands for installation. But I really want to get an avionics and electronics school going, and I just haven't figured out how to kick that off the ground yet.
I think that high voltage stuff that they use to run all of that is completely foreign to aviation. So there's going to be a lot of figuring it out on that. So, but like Robinson unveiled while we were out there, they have a autonomous version of the R66 and the R44 now. So they're still engine regular. The 66 is still a jet fuel powered turbine engine helicopter, but where the cockpit would normally be on it, they removed all of the cockpit stuff and just put 2 clamshell doors on the front of it. So now you can just load this big box of stuff in there and tell it where to go, and it flies itself there. So it's got the endurance and performance capability of the turbine engine, so it doesn't have the drawbacks that we currently have with the endurance and everything on the electric side. So I suspect that thing's going to do really well. It's pretty interesting.
I've seen some of that early on in research and development, that they had autonomous aircraft like the 206. They've got a 206 autonomous aircraft.
Pretty wild.
They had to, but they still had to have a pilot in there just in case. It's because that technology is still new, and you don't want that thing, like I said, going through someone's house, or you got civilian population to worry about. If they can ever perfect that, to where there doesn't have to be anybody on there. I mean, look at what the military's doing.
Yeah.
They're flying drones in the Middle East that some kid is sitting up here playing a video game in Cheyenne Mountain and making things happen.
It's pretty wild.
I mean, so we have the technology. How we introduce that into the civilian side of it, where I don't know if there's got to be some airspace changes and stuff like that, but there's going to have to be a lot of technical changes. I don't know if you come up with a different school for that than a 147. Maybe there's different. They talked about a part, FAR Part 66, which was where each mechanic was licensed based on what they were going to be working on.
Right.
So if you were going to be working on reciprocating engines, small aircraft, that's what you'd be licensed on. If you're going to be working on heavies, 9 passengers more, 135 operation, that's what you're licensed for. 121 operation, commercial aircraft, airlines, that's what you're going to be licensed for. Now they're looking at maybe a license to work on electrical aircraft. The 107, the FAR 107's out there right now for drones. That's to be able to fly them, get licensed, become a licensed drone pilot.
Right.
But they're going to have something to maintain all of those drones. So there's going to have to be something outside the Part 43 and Part 65 FAR, I believe.
Well, and technology is outpacing our ability to get good, safe, reliable adoption into the industry, right? So by the time it goes through all the required testing and safety periods and then gets through the FAA and gets rules made, the technology's been around for a long time. So we typically run a couple of decades behind, like automotive, for example, because of that. Have you seen much changing in the way that the FAA is doing approvals and regulatory changes or anything, or is that all still kind of running the way it always has?
I think I've seen some of that. I've seen the FAA has made things, they're simplifying it a little more in the processes. I've recently had a managing specialist for the school that left and went and was on the fully autonomous electrical vehicles,
Right.
VTOL or whatever, the drones.
Right.
And he was on that program trying to help write the regulation behind all that. And he spent a good part of 5 years on that program and come back and said, this is going to be a pretty good deal because they're doing it the right way. They're going to set. They first started out, I think, wanting to track it under the current regulations, and figured out that was just going to be way too convoluted
Right.
to try to maintain it under current regulation. They're going to have to set new regulations for this for it to work out right. But I think processes as far as getting things through and getting things approved and things like that, the FAA is becoming a kinder and gentler nation than they were, back in the day where they were pretty much wanting to take us all to task.
Yeah. Well,
they understand that things happen.
The
mistakes
compliance
happen.
philosophy that they're operating under now, in my opinion, creates a lot more safety than before. The only tool they had was a hammer, so everything was a nail, and it was, instead of people trying to improve safety, they improved the way they hit shit. And now they, as long as you own up to it, you put in the corrective actions, and you're doing things the right way, the FAA is doing a really good job of working with you to fix the problem instead of hiding the problem. And to me, that compliance philosophy has been a big improvement on the FAA's side and ability to regulate the industry.
Yeah, the continuous improvement processes of asking the 5 whys. Why did this happen? Was it procedural? Was it personnel?
Right.
Was it equipment? Going down the line there and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
You work in the process from start to finish, and then from finish back to start, to see if there's anything embedded in there that would have prevented something from happening.
Right.
I think that, using Six Sigma technologies and some of the human factor stuff that they've really started focusing on, that we're being tested on now, human factors just has really helped people understand where they're at when they get on the job, when they're assigned a task. Have I had enough rest? Do I have enough training to do this job? What's going to prevent me from being successful?
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors, a lot of things that come into play there.
For sure. So if you were talking to the parents of a younger kid or a teenager or whatever, would you recommend they go into an aviation career field at this point? And if yes, what are some keys that you would give them on how to be most successful in that?
I have a lawn sprinkler system at my house that I have and I hope the guy that does my sprinkler work doesn't hear this. But when his employees come over to work, I can see some of these young guys that are essentially digging ditches. And I'm thinking, man, if you would just, I can see their capabilities and their skill set there mechanically wise. And I'm like, if you just come out here to the school, I could teach you to be an aircraft mechanic. And this is, I always talk up aviation. I really think aviation is a great career to get into. It's not for everybody. It can be quite intense and a lot of pressure, especially in the manufacturing side of it. But I usually tell the students, a student or parent, what the industry expects from the person wanting to come into in here and becoming a mechanic, what they expect. And you hadn't taken your bicycle apart, go home and take it apart 12 times and see if it works every time you take it apart and put it together. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that can disassemble, assemble, and maintain a certain level of quality. You could take your bicycle apart, put it together, and the brakes don't work. You're not, doing yourself any favors or anybody else. But I generally tell them to, if you don't have any mechanical skills, we can work on the tool use, hand tools and power tools. A lot of times what we can't get across is critical thinking skills. So a job that would require less critical thinking and maybe a person's strong in the soft skills, written and verbal, we could send them to like a manufacturing, where they could continue their, you're going to continue your training out at A&P school regardless. We teach the basic skill set, if you will. I don't mean to call it basic skill set because we're more than just a blue-collar worker,
right.
But the skill sets we do teach, like we had mentioned earlier, are 28 different skill sets. That's a lot to learn. It's like feeding you with a fire hose.
For sure.
And trying to get you to remember everything that you've learned. And then you have the problem of 92% of what adult learners learn lose 72% of what they learn if they don't use it within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you got to continue to reinforce that. But I tell the students what they're getting into, what the opportunities are, and if you really want to learn this, you get in and get engaged. I have to have you engaged. You can't show up late. That's not going to do you any good on any job. And you have to be attentive and pay attention to detail and get involved. If you're reclusive and not outgoing or whatever, you're going to need to come out of your shell.
Right.
You're going to need to come out of your shell and be the person we need you to be and that you need to be for this industry. And there's a fit for you out there. It may not be Haven Aero or flight mechanics, or it could be Bell Helicopter. It might be Pantex.
Right.
Pantex hires a lot of our mechanics. Right. Like you said, there's other industries, wind energy and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But one of the things I tell them is that, you just need to be prepared to use hand tools and power tools and special tools, measuring equipment, etc., and be somewhat good with math. Because there's some math involved.
Right.
So
there's just a ton of diversity. So,
yeah.
Like if you're on a frontline mechanic for a corporate operation, you're going to be working on every inch of the airplane and doing something different every day. So if you like that diversity, there's that path. All the way down to you could work in a component shop and you put the same spring in the same part every day and everything in between. And, that's not even getting into like the NDT world and the avionics world. And there's just so much diversity that you can build off of if you just go get your license. It's cliche, but that's your license to learn. You get that license that gets your foot in the door, and then you can go, hey, I want to try this. No, I don't like that. I want to try this. But there's so much diversity within the industry. There's a fit for everybody that has a capacity to want to do it, even down to people that don't like turning wrenches all the time. Maybe they can go into a management path or a administrative path, but they still need the technical knowledge and the technical baseline to competently talk about aircraft.
Yeah,
so,
being able to use the vocabulary is one. I always tell them,
I have so many examples of people that we've hired into admin positions and different things, not technicians, where the first thing we do is tape the phonetic alphabet along the side of their computer because we're all talking in phonetic code all the time, and they're like, what the hell is Alpha Charlie, what so it's funny, just
like an RGB, reduction gearbox. What are you that's something you have to learn. There's always all these acronyms. Every company's got them, and it just grows exponentially. I reiterate that to our students, and even those wanting to come into this program, that, hey, this thing is, you're going to continually to be educated. I myself have been in this for over 40 years, and I continually get recurrent training, and, with the FAA or at the job that I currently hold with Amarillo College. And I had a guy tell me one time, if you ever stop learning in this industry, you need to get out.
For sure.
You need to get out and go do something else. Go retire, whatever. But
anyone watching the show that wants to help, is there anything that the school needs, you need, anything that's limiting your ability to continue delivering good technicians to the marketplace? I know you've hit me up a few times needing engine parts and spares and cores and different things for the school. Are you guys in a pretty good spot on all that? What's the anything anyone could help with it?
Unless something just catastrophic happens, I think we're in a pretty good position right now. We've been able to get some money through Perkins grants, and
nice.
I've made some trades with Avotech on some equipment to be able to get some newer equipment. You know, a lot of these 147 aviation maintenance schools, they start out on air bases that have been closed, and all the equipment is all former, you know, military type of equipment. So getting into the general aviation side of it, you need more of the general aviation type of equipment and products to work on. So we've been able to turn that around and getting rid of a lot of the old military stuff. But as far as just maybe scholarships, you know, maybe, you know, go to the high schools with us, become part of our business leadership council, and, hey, show up for a recruiting effort with us and say, hey, you know, let's go find that person, to give them a free ride on an aircraft to see if that really, you know,
ignites a spark with them.
Ignites a spark with them, and then, you know, maybe let them, maybe some of these younger kids see what it's like, a day in a life of a mechanic.
Right.
Which is what I think you're doing here, as well as the pilots, because we need pilots too.
Yeah.
Our industry has to get involved if we want to grow that, reduce that number of 800,000 by the year 2030. We've got to get involved with the younger people. We got, you know, and if they don't become aircraft mechanics, we've given them some life lessons that they can carry with them, that's going to stick with them and make a positive change in their life.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any last thoughts? Anything else you think the world needs to know about the situation of aircraft maintenance?
We need more aircraft mechanics. That's all I can say. We need more aircraft mechanics, and I don't know that we're going to be able to be in a position to put out more, but I just really appreciate the opportunity to work with the industry we have here in Amarillo. I really appreciate you guys at Haven and Flight Mechanics and, you know, all the other industries that are a part of our Business Leadership Council. You guys give some great feedback. You know, we enjoy the feedback because we can't fix things that we don't know about.
For sure.
If you see something that they a bad habit that we've instilled into them, let's get it corrected by all means. But other than that, I just think, you know, aviation is the greatest thing there is, but we just got to figure out how to get everybody else to believe that.
Get people to quit self-eliminating early.
Yeah.
Let everyone know that bring awareness that it's an option for just about anybody at some level out there.
I lost a kid this year. He thought that A&P was anatomy and physiology.
Oh, Lord.
Tell him he's in the wrong program.
Lord.
So
that's a big miss.
Yeah, so he's a nurse over there now on the West
that's
Campus.
Funny.
So we laugh about that.
Yeah.
He said, I think I'm in the wrong class. I was like,
I think you are, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So,
he's trying to figure out how to use that torque wrench on a patient.
Yeah. It was early on, so he got over there and got into his training. But, yeah.
Well, Mr. Smith, I appreciate your time being on, educate the audience on what we're facing here, and appreciate all of you guys tuning in for another episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for takeoff. You are now flying high with Travis Lamance.